All right, so let's talk about persuasion in games. We've got 7 strategies for guiding players. So these 7 persuasive techniques are another lens for viewing design. They come from the book Persuasive Games by Ian Bogost, who is kind of a famous modern game philosopher. Philosophizes about other stuff as well, but mostly games. So these techniques are all about getting a human to do something without feeling like they're being led or forced. They provide a framework to control or predict players through design to help them achieve a desired experience. So this is actually your main role as a designer, right? You're creating an experience, not a game. And that experience only exists once a player gets involved. So you want to make sure that they're having the experience that you intended and not something else. And therefore, we're going to use these persuasive techniques to sort of like narrow them in on the course that they're going to be doing. So we've got reduction, tunneling, tailoring, suggestion, self-monitoring, surveillance, and conditioning. So the first is reduction. So this is a simplification of player tasks. So for example, walking in games is usually intuitive and simplified, right? It's a one button or one stick motion. Because this is not usually an action where the pillar or core mechanic takes place. So in Celeste, walking is very easy because the core mechanic is not about walking, it's about other things. But in a game like Bennett Foddy, the entire game is about moving, and so that is made very difficult. It's given a high amount of friction because that is the experience that was intended for players of this game. Something like Death Stranding works the same way. Walking is obviously like a lot more complicated, but it's a game about walking places. So that is how it is. But then other things are going to be reduced and simplified. Now we got tunneling. So the player is guided to a particular path. You can never go anywhere or do any action. I mean, this is true. Even in open world games, there are walls. There is a sky at some point. There's a ceiling. There are places that you can't go that are defined by the game. So you can do this through level design. You can do it through controls. You can do it through lighting, and you can do it through breadcrumbs. So what I mean by this is not only is there like never a way to go everywhere, but usually there's like a golden path or a critical path, or some of the ways that we describe it. There is somewhere that we want the player to go. It's kind of, we want them to go in order to some degree, right? So like in Breath of the Wild, you are constrained to a very small plateau at the beginning of the game because there are a number of mechanics that are required for you to pick up before you can start exploring the rest of the world and going in any direction. So through the level design, they kind of like reduce you to that area. They also do it through breadcrumbs and through other aspects of level design. So they had a method where I think they triangulated everything in the world. So they wanted like every point of the triangle to have some interesting, point of interest. But you can also do it through like atmospheric level. So you can say like, well, there's a mountain over there. I probably have to do something with that like pretty soon. It's like, it's right there. I mean, Journey does that, right? There's a mountain and you're like, well, I'm going toward the mountain, so that's my breadcrumb. I guess I'll just follow that. There's nothing else interesting on the horizon. I've started in the desert. I guess I'll go that way. But in games that have like, interiors and are a little more constrained that way, you can do it through controls. So you can like you can sort of warn a player about whether they're going to fall off an edge, for example, through like haptic feedback. You can use lighting. So you in Control, in the example here, like they use red lighting to signify that there are enemies ahead, and so you always know like the player knows what they're expecting as they're coming up on this, and they're probably going to go toward it because they want to clear the enemies. Or you can use breadcrumbs, which is like a loose way to describe kind of stuff in the world that is like leading you along a path. It's not usually literal breadcrumbs. It's usually other things like, oh, well, there are more enemies this way, so I haven't cleared this area yet. I'm going to go that way. Or you might have like pickups on the ground or something like that, right? So we got tailoring. This provides direct behavior changing instructions to force a player to change action. So this could be negative reinforcement, like enemies or guards or hazards that are like literally preventing you from going a certain way, or it could be dialogue based. So like, don't go that way, NPC is over here, you can't leave the village yet, you know, that sort of thing. So you might use tailoring in a situation where you're finding that players just aren't like they just want to go somewhere different than you're intending. You can like kind of stick these hazards in the way, or these, you know, more direct actions of the game being like, nah, you can't do that yet. But it's a little more immersion breaking, so, you know. Okay, you can use suggestion. So this is teaching a player to change action by designing their in-game learning. So how did you know how to do an action in a game when no tutorial was given? As an example, here in Hollow Knight, and Super Meat Boy gives another really good like example of the same kind of thing. When you get the Mantis Claw in Hollow Knight, which allows you to do wall jumps or like wall clinging, which you couldn't previously do before you got this ability, it actually drops you into a room that you physically cannot jump out of. You have to use the wall climb to get out. And so you can use these kinds of suggestions where it's like literally suggested by the shape of the room, like, oh, I'm gonna have to cling to the wall in order to do this. And then the player has to learn it. Like if they're bad at it, they have to like do it a few times before they can get out, right? And at that point, they've probably mastered the control and they can be like given free rein to move on again. You might do some reinforcement. So you might give the same puzzle to them again, like shortly after, so that they have to do it again. And then at that point, you can kind of let them free. Self-monitoring. So players need to see how well they're doing. This could be situational in-context information, which is usually the job of the UI, or other feedback like sound, animation, music changes, that sort of thing. So in this screen where Link is reflecting a laser with his shield. This is like a pretty hard technique to do, or a fairly advanced technique to do in Breath of the Wild to kill these robots. There's a lot of different information on the screen, and even like you can't hear it, but there's audio as well that helps players monitor their progress, right? So they know they're near an enemy because the music changes. In fact, they know they're near this kind of enemy because the music changes to something very specific. There's a beeping that occurs that gets faster and faster, I think, right before the laser is about to go. There's obviously a visual cue, so there's like kind of a wind up, you know, like sucking in energy cue so that you know that it's about to happen. And then you know if you're successful or not, because when you're successful, you get that bright flash of light, and then obviously it gets reflected back. When you're unsuccessful, you fall backwards. Your character glows, you lose energy, Link probably grunts a little. Like there's a lot of different cues there that let you know whether you succeeded or failed. So giving the player feedback lets them know how they're doing, and that will enable them to learn how to improve. Ultimately, games are giant teaching machines. They're really about like teaching you their mechanics, and the player goes off and learns them and masters them. Like that's what a game is, at least by some definitions. So they have to have some way to know what they're doing. Okay, surveillance. So players need to be able to relatively compare themselves. This could be to an objective or something in the world. So this could be like the player's position in comparison to a map marker or a progress bar, like how far along they are in the level, how close they are to their objective. Or it can be to other players, so how good am I compared to someone else on the leaderboards, or, you know, like how far along in the story am I, what are my achievements compared to others, that sort of thing. And players need to be afforded the opportunity to improve their skills through repetition. So this is conditioning. So because learning new skills can be tricky. So this is sort of what I was talking about. This is like the other half of the suggestion side of things. So when you suggest something through the level design and you have them do it once, then later on, you have to do conditioning. So players need to have some practice with that. And so this is another area in Hollow Knight in the above screen where you're practicing that wall jump that you just learned, hopefully, because probably you've seen this area on your way in and you were like, I know there was something there. I want to get to it. I couldn't get to it before, so I'm going to go back and find it. So this lets you repeat the new skill and master it, because learning new skills can be tricky, especially like dexterity based ones. And you want to design with failure in mind. So if you can make failure in a game fun or meaningful, that really has an impact on players, because then they really feel like they've overcome the challenge when they get there, and they don't feel too bad about having failed, because maybe it was like a really funny death, or, you know, maybe it was really epic in some way, right?